Pinky Risotto, and it's time for my talk, in which I give my views on topics that make the news. Tennis was big in the news recently. Today I talk about Novak Djokovic. Djokovic grew up in war-torn Serbia, was ranked number 1 tennis player by the Association of Tennis Professionals. Djokovic won 20 Grand Slam singles and dominated Australian tennis, winning the Australian Open a record 9 times. But recently, it's his off-court actions at the Australian Open 2022 that arrested the attention of the world, both tennis and non-tennis fans like me. With the same doggedness and grit that made Djokovic top seed in the field of world tennis, the Serbian player challenged a nation and, well, he lost. In the eyes of many, though, he was undefeated in his defeat, for though we may not have agreed with his stance on vaccine mandates that stood between him and the chance to become the 21st Grand Slam winner, the tenacity he exercised in the struggle for his chance to play was gripping. The name Djokovic dominated television news stations across the world for weeks leading up to the Australian Open 2022. The Australians vacillated in their decision of allowing or not allowing Djokovic to play in his unvaccinated status. But Djokovic stood firm. He was not going to get vaccinated, and he wanted to define the parameters of acceptance to play, even on unscientific medical grounds. When the prospects were so alluring, up for grabs was the trophy and $2.875 million. Australia's position is that elite athletes need to be vaccinated in order to play and show proof of the same. The Association of Tennis Players announced this criterion to players prior to entry. Djokovic refused to take the vaccine, then armed to the teeth with the best lawyers, he took on the nation and its vaccine policy. Now, let us look at the issue from the perspective of the government. It is the role of a government to set the parameters for conduct geared at protecting the society. RNZ News on February 5th reported that daily COVID cases in Victoria were 10,000 up to January 2022. Omicron virus was surging, it was reported. One cannot therefore fault the Australian government for setting parameters to ensure the protection of its people. Djokovic's defiance can be seen as counterintuitive, contrary to logic. He was well aware of requirements mandated for entry into the Australian Open. He had a lot hanging on this game. Up for grabs were his possible 21st Grand Slam, the 9th win in the Australia's Open, and #1 tennis player in the world. He even continued to train with the threat of visa cancellation looming over him. Why was he so defiant when he was so vested in the game? Now, Rafael Nadal ran off with a title that everyone knows was rightfully Djokovic's. Djokovic gave Rafael Nadal the chance to break the record to win the 21st major championship. Novak's defiance could be perceived as obstinacy born out of excessive pride, hyped self-confidence, or reckless self-indulgence. John Hopkins Medicine views all authorized COVID-19 vaccines as highly effective at preventing serious disease, hospitalization, and death from COVID-19. For these reasons, Is it then wrong for the Australian government to want to promote vaccine mandates to protect and prevent the described scenario? I don't think anyone could fault the Australian government for wanting to protect their people and the players for a COVID-safe Australian Open. Tennis player Nadal, who went on to win the Australian Open 2022, had this to say of Djokovic's debacle, according to WNYC Radio. He made his decisions, and everybody is free to take their own decisions, but then there are consequences. Nonetheless, Djokovic, for his part, remained defiant. Defiance can sometimes be counterproductive, but it can be praiseworthy too. Defiance was praiseworthy when Harriet Tubman was in defiance of her slave master to lead other slaves, and when Dr. King and Rosa Parks acted in defiance of oppressive segregationist policies. Defiance was praiseworthy when Sandra Larova, now 87, in defiance of Hitler, saved so many Jewish children from a Hitler-orchestrated genocide. Defiance was praiseworthy when then businessman Oskar Schindler saved hundreds of Jews from deportation to Auschwitz, Nazi Germany. When Nelson Mandela defied South African apartheid system, defiance was seen as praiseworthy. Then there are also instances of praiseworthy defiance in sports. For instance, Tommy Smith and John Carlos raised their fists during the national anthem as a political gesture for human rights. When Australian silver medalist Peter Norman wore a human rights badge in support in an Olympic protest in Mexico in 1968, that was a defiance that was also praiseworthy. Colin Kaepernick fights against social injustice, risking his career to take a stand against anti-black racism is also a praiseworthy act. These aforementioned acts of defiance were not selfish, but acts to conquer limitations imposed on people groups. Djokovic's defiance falls short of these parameters. Djokovic's defiance could have proven to be deadly. According to an Essentially Sports article, Novak Djokovic also posed with a number of kids at his tennis center in Belgrade on December 17, a day after his COVID PCR test, and it was positive. It may be okay to be an anti-vaxxer before being diagnosed with COVID. It is unconscionable to go among others, even children, after being diagnosed with the disease. Not only this, but after testing positive for the virus, Djokovic also attended a maskless ceremony as part of a maskless indoor panel discussion on December 16, a few weeks before the tennis tournament. Now, this is downright irresponsible. Defiance could be praiseworthy, but Djokovic, I don't think your form of defiance measures up, since yours was an attempt to make over the world in your likeness. Under different conditions, your protest could have been considered a virtue. And this is Ingrid Rizzolo, and this has been my talk. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give me those strong comments. Bye for now. See you next time.